So a lighter blue and a slightly darker blue is on your brush right now. Like whether it's the lighter one or the darker one, either way is fine. We're just gonna kind of trace out two dome shapes of where the jellyfish are going. It would be totally okay to just paint it all blue and then put the orange on top, but the orange will pop a lot better on white. So if we like carve out a space for them, that will be best. So I'm just gonna kind of, doesn't have to be perfect right now. We're probably gonna accidentally pop into it. Angle this up. Again, it doesn't have to be very pretty. Make that one as big as you want to. I could have probably gone a little bigger, but I'm gonna say it's good. I'm gonna do the little back here. And then, I don't know, if you want to get real crazy, you could put one like up here, down here. You could do it however you want. To the bottom. And you're going to just go around your jellyfish as carefully as you can. I think I'm going to use this brush. It's like a filbert. It's rounded. It's a little bigger. So I can make some big stripes with it. Color. So the one that's even whiter. And I'm going to do my very best to go from one edge of the canvas all the way to the other. And I'm starting at the top with this really light color. What you want to try to not do is like this, because you'll get weird streaks, and we want this to kind of look like smooth ocean, you know, under the water. And you don't have to take too long with it. You know, if you have a good amount of paint on your brush, you can do a long stroke. You can smooth it down if you have any really blobby spots. And you can go as far down as you want this really light color to be. It kind of stops right about here-ish. And then you can start grabbing your slightly darker color, where that smooth strokes really kind of takes effect, because this is where you can start blurring it up into the color above. So you kind of have to work a little quick just because your paint will dry if you don't. And I know it's going to be a little tricky going around those blobs, but if you accidentally go inside it like that, that's okay, because we can paint over it if we have to. Say this slightly darker blue can go down pretty far until you get really close to the bottom, and then if you want, you can use just the regular primary blue off your plate, or whatever aqua-ish blue you're using. If you have to kind of move up and down like this in between, that's okay. It doesn't always have to be side to side. Wherever it works is where it works. So at this like very bottom area, I'm going to start using my regular blue, really darken up the deeper part of the ocean. And the more times you go back and forth with your brush between both colors, the more it will blur. Hello, Stan. You watching me paint? Ocean floor. And if the gradients aren't like super perfect here, it's okay, because we're gonna put all the jellyfish legs kind of floating around here, so that can help camouflage stuff. Yeah, hi. So we'll just let that dry for a minute. But as it's drying, if you want to get some oranges ready, you can.
Oh, that's what you mean. No, I just
Stand by. Got like a microscopic view of his fur. Off this pointy brush, and I'm gonna mix with that. Take these oranges. You kind of just need like 3 shades. Even just 2 would be okay. If you're making it, you want to use more yellow than red usually to get an orange, because red's very powerful.
Orange? Oh, you want a banana?
and then a tiny bit of red. So here's my scoop of yellow. And I'm just gonna do like that much red and just mix that around. But I'm also gonna add some white to this. To spice it up a bit. Like a pumpkin-y orange. It's a little lighter.
Okay. Right.
And we can use this to like fill the whole jellyfish in if we want. And then we can make a deeper, kind of more reddish orange. So we can, if your blue is pretty dry on your background too much, you should be able to kind of put jellyfish shapes down. Don't worry too much if you can see through it, because we're gonna like layer stuff. Hey, so much Game Grumps with me. It's fine. Okay. And you can actually make your jellyfish under part kind of bow down a little if you want, because we're going to kind of create like a interesting opening. So let's fill that in. And you can do the little one too.
Those trees don't look very happy.
We're not all brown.
Just make all my brush strokes go like the same way.
Oh.
After I filled it, just to kind of make it a little bit, see how all my brush strokes kind of go up and down. So even if it is streaky, at least it looks in the realm of what we're aiming for. So we're looking a little funny right now, but that's okay. That's how paintings start. I'm gonna keep this orange color because we're probably gonna want to use it for some blending in a little bit. So make sure you still have a good amount of that. But I'm just gonna leave my brush dirty and I'm gonna make a darker orange. So that means you can use more red this time. So you can do yellow and more red. Boop. Mix that together. You can make it as light as you want. It doesn't have to be anything specific. It's just got to be darker. I'm going to do a little more yellow because I used a lot of red apparently. And I still want it to be orangey. The thing is, like, it's going to kind of blend with the color we put down. So you'll have room to play with it. Yeah. The darker red or to kind of cover this edge of our jellyfish and sort of start blending the orange in until we get to this side, and we can use some white at the end to like add that pop. But you also want to add that reddish color down here, kind of where the opening is, where the legs are going to be, and we'll worry about this line after. So for now, take that darker color and I'm going to go kind of just right along the side of the jellyfish there. And just start working it in. If your orange is still a little wet, that's okay. It might even help with some of the blending. Now I haven't grabbed any more paint, but it's already starting to kind of fade off. And my other orange is still kind of tacky, so it's kind of blurring with it. Get to add some down here, all the way across, however big you want that opening to be. Because you can add the line above it after. You can make it a little wiggly if you want.
You can't do something.
So if it didn't blend for you as much as it did for me here, all you have to do is wipe off your brush or rinse it if you feel like it's too covered in red. Act that by starting in your other pumpkin-y one and start working it over into the darker color. Because that's how you want it, you would get that like gradient kind of happening. It's okay if some stuff sort of flares off where it's not necessarily supposed to be. Doesn't have to be a perfect science. You just want to keep in mind what's on your paintbrush So like if you are trying to make more of the pumpkin orange color happen and you've picked up some of the darker orange on your brush, you're just gonna wanna wipe it off in between. You can layer this up again if you want. And then to get rid of those like last, if you have any of those like blue streaks from the background still kind of showing through, that's where you would rinse or wipe your brush off. And you can have a little of the pumpkin color on your brush just to help with the blending, but also use a little bit of white, not much, just a little. And you're gonna kind of just brush that along the edge until it kind of blurs and makes its own orange color. I almost said purple. So use that white orange combo to create the crazy line here that separates like the underneath of the jellyfish. And that's gonna kind of just blur into its own blend of weird things. So it doesn't have to be a perfectly white line. It can have some orange in it. Why did I almost say green? And I wouldn't worry about like this dark area if you can still see some of your background through it, because we're gonna put all those legs in there, which should help camouflage it. But if it bothers you, you can use some white and orange in there to kind of blur it up if you want. But it's not super crucial, I would say. You still want that area to be pretty dark. Ta-da! I don't know what it looks like right now, but something. Coconut. Half a coconut. Same process we did for this big jellyfish head, we're gonna do for the little one. And I can explain it again as we go through it. Off my brush, starting fresh. And I'm gonna take my darker red color, reddish orange, along the right side. Sort of wonky bumpy thing down here too, opening. Bringing this over a bit, and then I'm wiping off my brush because this one's definitely dry. And I'm grabbing some of my pumpkin orange and I'm laying it here, and I'm gonna work it over into the red orange. Still working over with that pumpkin color. Keep in mind like how much paint's on your brush if you're trying to blend something. If there's a lot of paint on your brush and you're trying to blend, it's probably just gonna keep adding paint where you don't want it. So try putting 2 colors down that you want to blend together, and then wipe your brush off and then try to blur them together. Adding paint and adding paint and adding paint.
Okay.
Because the paint's already on there, and then you just have to use your blur them.
Oh.
The white streak over here, which isn't much paint because it'll blur pretty quick. And you can use that as the line too. Beautiful jellyfish. We'll want those to dry for a minute too. Although you could do the darker reddish if you want to do these tassels in the legs, because there's like deep red ones, and I just used the same deep red that I used in the jellyfish. So if you want that, because it's okay if it's the same color. I've just got my pointy brush and that orange color, And you can honestly just drag them down. You can press hard if you want a thicker mark, and then you can press lighter to like let it disappear.
Brush, okay. Yep.
Longer pointy brush. And kind of, this isn't like a be-all end-all rule, but it's usually a little thicker here. And then as they go down, they kind of get a little skinnier, so just release your pressure. And I would say you could fill up a good amount of these as like a good base. You can even make them like spread out farther if you want. There is one I noticed that goes like this and then kind of like woo, flicks up like that. So you could definitely do a couple of those before the jellyfish is totally dry because it's the same color as the inside there.
Ooh.
Watch how you hold the brush too if you're upright like me. If you hold your brush up here, it's a lot easier on the, if you have a metal part of your brush closer up there. If you hold it way back here, it's harder to paint with. The gravity works against you. And I like to swirl my brush in the paint to help get it pointy. Like that. And the paint does dry on the brush sometimes, so if you have to rinse it off every once in a while to freshen it up, you can. We can do a couple on this guy. Ooh. Probably want to just let those legs dry a little bit before we add more. So if you do decide to drag through any of them, you don't like create a weird, ugly color. If you want to do a hair dryer, you can, or you can just give it a minute. So there's a lot of colors here. You can honestly do whatever you like, but there's definitely pink thrown in there, so you could do like white and red. There's green, so yellow and blue, and there's variations of them too. So if you want to do like green and blue or yellow and blue, do more yellow in one and more blue in another. You could also use your darker blue color for some streaks here. And I would say it doesn't really matter which color you do first. As long as you save like the white ones for the end, because there's like some white on the very tops. I'm probably gonna paint.
Same brush?
Yeah, you can use that one or you can use a smaller one, whatever works best for you. Some of them start to get a little bit more like wispy. So if you want to use a smaller one, that works. Falling off my chair. So I'm gonna make a pink here. I'm just gonna do some white and some red. Pink, it could be even lighter if you want. Yeah, and then I'm just gonna start kind of tossing it in there. Now, if you're worried about how it looks coming from the jellyfish, you can, if you want, you can go really close to this line and bring it out from there, or you can just be really, really gentle and make it like really skinny and then thicken and then loosen, because that looks like it's kind of just fading out of there. And even at the end, if you want to tweak stuff, you can go back in with your darker orange color and tweak stuff up here. But I think honestly, the more you layer it up, the better it will look. Afraid of putting them over each other and kind of crisscrossing them and stuff. Haven't yet. But remember, there's lots of other colors to do too, so you don't have to go overboard right away. Next color I think I'm gonna do is like a light blue, which I might even go lighter than what we did for the background. So if I have that color, I'll just add like white to that. Very, very light. Looks white. I don't know. See, that's why painting's an experiment. Came out looking really white, and then I just used my regular one, and I like this one better. Some of those in there. The tassels are really just kind of whatever you want in any kind of color anyway.
Yeah.
Blue tassels. I'm going to start making some green. I'll do a light one, which will be a lot of yellow, and a little bit of blue, and maybe some white.
Oh, okay.
Just to spice it up. It's kind of limey. And then more of a grassier one, which will be like yellow, a little more blue, and probably just leave that one. You don't have to put white in that one. And you can start making tassels, whichever one you want. I have this dark one on my brush, so I'm going to go with that one. And just keep layering. So you could honestly add any kind of color you want to these jellyfish, like all day long. You could add darker greens if you want. You could add light yellows. You can really do whatever you want. You can even do like, you don't even have to do a full tassel if you don't want to. Like, here, I'll just make a quick light yellow here. You could just do like a line like that, kind of just like it's amongst them. So it doesn't have to be a full tassel if you don't want. And then the last thing I'm gonna do before I do the white here, this one, this is a phthalo blue, so it's a little darker. And I'm just gonna use that as is for some tassels. Again, it doesn't have to be a full tassel, it could be a couple streaks. It's very fun to just keep adding them.
The white yet? Do we go in and?
You can now if you're ready.
Okay, all right.
Off my brush. And again, it can be very, minimal. It doesn't have to be every. You can use your brush, and you can start making small. And even the teeny tiny are good for this because these are supposed to be like kind of like highlights, almost. Oops, I picked up some dirt, some wet. You can get small lines with a bigger brush like this. You just have to press smaller or lighter. But a smaller brush is even easier for that. And then bubbles here. Not too much, just a little bit of pop here and there to balance it out. Okay, so they're just circles, basically.
Yep.
I'm gonna use a smaller brush just to be a little more ish. And they're all gonna be white to start.
Oh, okay.
A couple of them are pink for some reason, I think like from catching the light from the jellyfish tassels. So if you wanted to do them like multiple colors, I don't think that would be bad.
Okay.
I'm gonna roll my brush in white paint. And let's see, the biggest ones, we've got a couple hanging out in between these two guys. So you're just gonna do carefully as you can, they're bubbles, so they're not like perfectly circular. They can be a little wonky. And they might take a couple coats to get them really, really white, but throw one up here. There's lots of teeny tiny bubbles everywhere, and you can use the wooden end of your paintbrush if you want, like we did in some other things. Just deep in your white paint, so you have a little blob on the end, and you can just stamp it on there. Just be kind of deliberate with where you're putting it, and the dots will kind of get smaller as you go. Try not to go too fast because you might get like strings between them. But you can get like little dots like that too. You can even make some of them a little bigger if you want, to help take up some space. And then there's just a ton of them kind of trailing between these two big guys here. There's definitely a really big one kind of in this open spot. Around. If any of your tassels are still wet, you can hold off if you want before you start painting over them. I would say these are about the size of like a quarter, and then down to like a dime size, and then there's like super teeny tiny ones. So yeah, you can just start kind of throwing them in there. Kind of want to like try not to make it symmetrical at all. Usually like odd numbers is great. And if you're like too close together, start kind of spitting bubbles that are blobs. I'm just kind of eyeballing what's going on the other one. But yeah, and they can trail up and get smaller here. And once you have like the bulk of the big ones you want, make sure you have a couple tiny ones kind of spread around them to show that they are starting to kind of dissipate. And then you can turn your brush around and do all the little dots kind of everywhere. All along inside the tassels, on the bottom, anywhere you want. How they form and stuff. So this is where if you want to color any of the bubbles, you can. That example has like a couple pink ones. I think, like I said, picking up on the tassels, you know, they're bubbles, so they catch the color behind them and stuff. So you could fill in a couple of them. You don't have to be pink. You could do green or blue, or you could do a couple different ones if you want. But definitely leave some white ones kind of in between them to kind of help balance it out a little. Maybe one over here. Ah. You know, I kind of want to make this one pink too. Just looking at it, it seems too much white right there. I like it. There's the jellyfish. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, I love it. Bye, guys. Have a good day.
Bye.